Well, with the passing of Maya Angelou, we certainly lose one of the giants of African American literature. And it's certainly fair to say that Maya Angelou is one of the most significant African American writers, really, of the last half century. And she belongs to that remarkable generation that really changed the way we understand the place of African American writing in American literature as a whole. Angelou is remarkable because she really took her own life as her main subject. Her poetry, or her remarkable works of memoir and autobiography, everything is really taking her own life as the main focus. And so she uses her life as a kind of offering and even a kind of sacrifice for her readers. And it means that people have a remarkably intimate relationship with this woman. People read her books and have a sense that they know her and that they understand her suffering, and her suffering speaks to their suffering, and her triumphs somehow become the reader's triumphs in a very important way. Angelou's most famous book remains I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And here it's a work of autobiography. She writes about her own childhood and young adulthood. And in that book, she chronicles, terrible suffering, horrendous injustice, bodily harm and trauma, and it's part of that offering up of her own life to the readers. And of course, what's most remarkable about Angelou, and this is true of her books, it's also true of the readings and performances for which she was so famous, is how generative, how positive, how remarkably forward-looking she is in all of her work. She confronts the brutality of racism, the reality of American racism, certainly doesn't shy away from it, takes it on head first, but then transforms it into something life-giving, into something positive. She emerged at a pivotal era in American literary history. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was finished in '69. It was published in 1970. That same year, Toni Morrison published her first novel, The Bluest Eye. Morrison went on to become the first African-American writer to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. During that same period, in the early '70s, Alice Walker published The Color Purple. So Angelou was part of this whole generation of African-American women writers who really were the first ones to speak the African-American female experience. There had been some important forerunners, Jessie Fawcett during the Harlem Renaissance, Zora Neale Hurston in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s. But these books were all out of print in the 60s, and a whole generation of African-American women were now finishing college, going into graduate school, going into literary studies, and they quite literally resurrected the work of people like Hurston and Fawcett, and Angelou and Walker and Morrison were very much part of that whole generation. And so they gave a voice to what it was like to be an African-American woman in the 20th and now all the way into the 21st century. And these have become some of the most enduring and dominant works in American literature, really from World War II to the present. Morrison's great novels like Beloved and Jazz and Paradise, Walker's The Color Purple and Meridian, and of course Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and her great works of poetry and memoir to follow. So when I think of Maya Angelou, I think not just of a great writer, but also of an incredible performance artist. She was trained in music, she was trained in song, she was trained in dance, and in her remarkable readings, these really were performance art. She would combine song with storytelling, with poetry, with recitation, with dance, an extraordinarily talented and energetic artist in so many ways. She came to Washington and Lee. I remember, I believe it was in 1999, she came and spoke. I think Contact was the group that brought her here, a student group, and she performed in Lee Chapel, and it was mesmerizing. The chapel was full of students and faculty and community members. She gave a magnetic performance, and once more she took her own life and her own experience and used that as the stuff of her art. And when I think about her, I think about a very courageous trailblazer. I think about an extraordinarily gifted artist, and somebody who was just fearless in putting her own life forward as something that others could learn from, could benefit from, be inspired by. And she really has come to inspire generations of readers through her work.